In ancient Greece, there was a king so cunning that he dared to challenge even the gods of Olympus, a man capable of deceiving death not once, but twice. This is the incredible story of Sisyphus, ruler of Corinth, whose extraordinary intellect was both his greatest gift and the cause of his terrible fate. Over the centuries, his name has become synonymous with attempting the impossible, with pride, and with eternal punishment. But why, after all, was Sisyphus condemned to roll a stone forever? Get ready to discover one of the most intriguing tales in Greek mythology. In the ancient city of Corinth reigned a man whose craftiness was so famous that it inspired as much respect as distrust. His name was Sisyphus, a sovereign admired for his keen intellect, yet feared for his penchant for deceit. He was probably the cleverest man of his age. Yes, the cleverest, though certainly not the wisest. Born of the lineage of Prometheus, the titan who dared to defy Zeus by stealing the sacred fire and giving it to humankind, Sisyphus seemed destined to follow in his rebellious ancestors' footsteps. He inherited not only the brilliance of a restless mind, but also the audacity to question the limits imposed by the gods. Yet his cleverness lacked wisdom, and so he was prone to arrogance. Sisyphus gloried his own cunning, believing that with it he could bend even the divine will. Thus Sisyphus involved himself in matters that belonged only to the gods. He witnessed the abduction of the young and beautiful Aegina, carried across the sky by a huge eagle, who was none other than Zeus, lord of Olympus in disguise. The god was once again led by his uncontrollable passions. Where other mortals would have trembled, Sisyphus saw only opportunity. He realized he could profit from another's misfortune, heedless of the danger in crossing the boundary between human and divine. Despite Corinth's splendor, its people suffered from a shortage of drinking water, a problem that threatened both the city's prosperity and its survival. Aegina was the daughter of Sisyphus, the river god, now sunk in despair over his missing child. The paternal grief of Sisyphus echoed in the waterways themselves, making rivers scarcer and springs less generous, as though nature too mourned the loss. Ever alert to others' weaknesses, Sisyphus sought out Sisyphus and addressed him with carefully chosen words in a soothing voice. "Divine Lord of fresh waters, I know the whereabouts of your daughter, but that information has a price. If you wish to learn where Aegina is, create for Corinth a perennial spring of pure water to slake my people's thirst and magnify my reign, and I will reveal the location of your missing child." Consumed by grief, Sisyphus did not hesitate. The bargain would cost him practically nothing. And so, from the depths of the earth, he caused a crystalline fountain to burst forth, whose water seemed laden with divine promises. Satisfied, Sisyphus divulged the secret, and Sisyphus departed in fury to confront Zeus. Corinth celebrated the arrival of the spring. The king gained greater prestige among his subjects and saw his reputation for craftiness grow even more. Yet in acting thus, Sisyphus failed to perceive that he was meddling with forces beyond mortal control. The balance between gods and men had been violated, and the consequences would soon appear. On Olympus, Zeus felt outraged to learn that his secret had been exposed by an insolent mortal. For the Lord of Thunder, it was inadmissible that anyone should dare denounce the deeds of the gods, defying the order and respect due to divinity. Beyond his wrath, the god feared that other humans might take inspiration from Sisyphus and likewise challenge the gods. And if the goddess Hera began discovering all his amorous exploits through the reporting of mortal informers, his life would become a nightmare. Zeus therefore summoned Thanatos, the somber personification of death, whose gaze could freeze even the bravest of men. To Zeus, the authority of the gods could not be threatened with impunity. He wished Sisyphus's fate to serve as an example, and to mark the abyss separating gods and mortals. Zeus ordered Thanatos to descend to Corinth and reap the life of the insolent king, thus restoring the balance that had been broken. Gloomy and majestic, Thanatos crossed the borders of the living world. His presence carried the chill of eternity and the silence of tombs. But Sisyphus, whose mind never rested, sensed death's approach and quickly devised a plan. "So my hour has come. I confess I am amazed by your splendor, noble Thanatos. Among all the gods I have met, few possess such distinguished bearing. Before I depart, allow me to present you with some ornaments that will enhance your majesty still further. For me, such jewels will be of no use." Accustomed to being feared and never praised, Thanatos succumbed to vanity. What he did not know was that behind the sweet and flattering words, Sisyphus was plotting his greatest trick. Sisyphus handed Thanatos a pair of polished silver bracelets and a necklace of seemingly exquisite design. Yet those ornaments were nothing but shackles in disguise and a collar. When the still flattered Thanatos allowed the king to put the jewels on him, he felt the weight of chains close around his wrists and neck. In an instant, death, eternal and invincible, became the prisoner of a mortal. The deed was so unthinkable that death itself believed it impossible. Sisyphus looked into Thanatos' eyes, and for the first time, the god experienced impotence and humiliation. The deity demanded his release, but Sisyphus ignored him, certain he had conquered death itself. Days and weeks passed, and soon the whole world felt Thanatos' absence. No man died anymore. Wars led by Ares turned into endless, futile duels. The wounded writhed in agony but did not depart. Houses filled with the sick. Suffering dragged on. Charon, ferryman of the underworld, rode alone, his boat empty, waiting for souls that never arrived. The universal balance was broken. Chaos spread, and even the gods grew restless. Ares, seized by a mounting fury, decided to act. The god of war marched to Corinth, burst through the palace gates, and with a mighty stroke of his sword, shattered Sisyphus' chains, freeing Thanatos. The return of death brought both relief and terror, and Sisyphus knew the god's revenge would now be relentless. Thanatos' first thought after being freed was vengeance. Without delay, he set off in search of Sisyphus to fulfill Zeus's command. Yet Sisyphus, ever cautious, had devised another ruse. Fearing divine retribution, he instructed his wife, Merope, that should he die, she must not perform the proper funeral rites for him, nor grant him royal honors. His wife did not understand her husband's plan, but she did as he asked, knowing Sisyphus' mind was always one move ahead of everyone else's. When Thanatos finally arrived, Sisyphus accepted his fate with a strange, almost theatrical serenity. He allowed death to reap him. On the other side, Charon waited, tired and irate, surrounded by multitudes of souls that had piled up and could at last cross the river. Many gazed at Sisyphus in curiosity, recognizing the mortal who had dared defy the gods. Upon reaching the underworld, Sisyphus was led before Hades, god of the dead. The somber palace was filled with echoes and shadows. Hades, stern and relentless, regarded the king with a mixture of contempt and irritation. Beside the god stood Cerberus, the dreaded three-headed hound, eager for his master to reward him with royal flesh. Hades rebuked Sisyphus harshly, speaking of the importance of order, of the balance between life and death, and of the danger in a mortal imagining himself above the gods. Judgment time had come, but Sisyphus, true to his nature, had prepared yet another speech. "Noble lord of the underworld, I acknowledge that I have caused great turmoil in your realm and never intended to offend you. Yet I have been wronged by my own wife, Merope, who denied me funeral rites. She cast me into oblivion like a dog's carcass, dishonoring not only me, but your domains as well. I beg you, allow me to return to Earth for just one day. I must punish my wife and ensure that my funeral befits a king, thereby honoring the underworld as it deserves. I promise that at nightfall I will return voluntarily to your realm and submit to whatever fate you decree." Hades, suspicious yet intrigued by such audacity, granted the request, not without warning that the pact was sacred, and breaking it would only worsen his guilt. Sisyphus gave his word. But as soon as he resurfaced, he ignored his promises, sought out his wife, and together they fled, deceiving the gods in death once more. Time passed. Sisyphus lived in hiding, far from the gods' gaze, enjoying an unusually long old age for a mortal. For a while, he may have believed he had conquered the very condition of humanity, but everything mortal ends one day. When his hour finally came, there were no tricks, pacts, or possible escape. Thanatos appeared once more to lead Sisyphus to the underworld. Before Hades, the king heard his final sentence. He would be cast into Tartarus, the darkest region of Hades, where the greatest enemies of the gods serve eternal sentences. There, Sisyphus received a terrible punishment, forever to push an enormous boulder up a mountain. Each time he reached the summit, the stone slipped and rolled back to the beginning. And so his labor began anew, endlessly, senselessly, with no hope of success for all eternity.